The page is at 8.
Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for coming on a Saturday afternoon in what's really springtime to participate in the best kind of democracy, which is the kind where people show up. So thank you. My name is Kate Josephs. I am a member of Lincoln County Indivisible, and I want to thank my fellow LCI volunteers and those from Indivisible Booth Bay who helped put this event together. Thanks also to the staff of Great Salt Bay School for hosting us and running the event, to Mal Gormley for videotaping, to More Voice, who's going to help us understand ranked choice voting, and to the Lincoln County Democrats who've been helping us behind the scenes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you most of all to the candidates, the hardworking, generous people, state, federal, and local, who give so much of themselves in an effort to make our lives better. We really, really appreciate you. And to you in the audience, I hope you will stay afterwards for a few minutes to talk to your local candidates who are setting up along the side. You can ask them questions. You can sign up to volunteer for their campaigns. Their names are on the back of your programs, and many of them are here today. Not all of them are able to be. So with us this afternoon to speak are 6 Democratic candidates for governor: Adam Cody, Donna Dion, Senator Mark Dion, Mark Eves, who will be a few minutes late and asked us to start with Adam, Diane Russell, and Betsy Sweet. One more candidate, Attorney General Janet Mills, is not here today. She's with us by proxy. She could not be here because of a conflict with her job as Attorney General, and we didn't feel it was right to penalize her for doing the people's business. So we sent her questions in advance, and she gave us written answers. Now, obviously that gives her an advantage over her fellow candidates who have to think on their feet. We also think that they have an advantage over her in that they're able to use their real voices, project their personalities and intelligence to you, the audience, react to each other in real time, and it is the best we can do, and we'll just have to leave it at that. So thank you for your understanding, and to you too. A very brief word on the Indivisible movement, which is bringing you this event. It's an organic political awakening that sprang up nationwide in the wake of the last election. So people were stunned, they were hurting, they were terrified. You'll remember how we all felt. And we gathered in 2s and 3s, and then in 10s and hundreds, and then finally in millions to attend that amazing Women's March after the inauguration. In the wake of that, we asked each other what happened. We asked what we should do next, and then we started building new communities to heal ourselves and do that work. So Lincoln County Indivisible was started by 3 local women after the march, and Indivisible Booth Bay had a similar start. Today, LCI numbers more than 500 activist voters, and Booth Bay has more than 400. Are any of the founders here today? Willing to stand up and take a bow? All right, well, they're awesome people.
Yes, they're too shy.
They're too shy. So I counted more than 49 of these indivisible groups in Maine alone, and I know I missed a few. Nationwide, there are thousands of them. Many of the participants are new to political organizing, and lots of them are women. Together, we engage in resistance, education, street theater, community action of many kinds. We call our elected officials. We show up in their offices. We write them letters and checks. We hold empty chair town halls when people like Senator Collins refuse to show up. We work with the ACLU and the students at Lincoln Academy who are worried about being shot in the hallways of their own school. We work to reduce incivility and political dysfunction in our lives. So every group is different, but the Indivisible movement has 3 broad aims: defeat the Trump agenda, elect progressive leaders, and realize bold progressive policies. We don't identify as partisan, but hold values that overlap with those of many, many Democrats. Also Greens, Democratic Socialists, Independents, some Libertarians, and some Republicans. So the reason you see only Democrats up here today is because there's a primary on June 12th. And these are the progressive candidates who have to face off in that primary. And we need as much help as you do in trying to figure out how to choose among the abundance of talent and energy and goodwill among these candidates. So thanks again for being here. So now I want to introduce our moderator, Barb Burt, who many of you will know. She lived for 22 years in Newcastle, now lives in Green Bay. Barb is a tireless advocate of good government. She has worked on many campaigns, local and national, paid and unpaid. And as Vice President at Common Cause in DC, she led the organization's National Election Reform Program. Her personal hero is Frances Perkins. She served as the first executive director of Maine's Frances Perkins Center. And Barb believes that good leadership entails listening to, valuing, and learning from the stories of others. So thank you, Barb.
Everybody, when Kate and I were emailing furiously back and forth this morning and the sun was shining, we were both thinking, is anybody going to come because it's such a gorgeous day? But you came, so that is really great. It's wonderful to be here with such a great slate of candidates. But first I want to know a little bit about you in the audience. So first I'm going to ask you, how many of you feel that Maine has been moving in the right direction in the last 8 years? Okay, let's try it a little differently. How many of you care deeply about Maine and its people and think we need a change in leadership? Yes! That's very good. Okay, how many of you are registered to vote? Again, excellent. Now I'm going to ask a personal question. How many of you are registered to vote as a Democrat? And the reason why I ask that is, in this primary on June 12th, if you want to vote for these candidates, if you want to rank them, which you'll be able to do, you need to be registered as a Democrat. You can change your registration after the primary if you don't want to hold on to that. But in order to vote on the 12th of June, you do need to be registered as a Democrat. And we're very lucky we have people at a table right over there who can make sure that that happens for you. You can do that after the forum. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the candidates very quickly, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how the forum works, and then we'll get to the heart of the meeting. As you know, Janet Mills can't be with us, but I'll tell you a little bit about her. She lives in Farmington. In addition to being the state's Attorney General, she's a grandmother. Her husband, Stan Kuklinski, died in 2014. In her private life, among other endeavors, Janet writes and enjoys poetry. Adam Cody lives in Sanford with his wife and their 5 children. He spent 20 years in the U.S. Army National Guard, serving in Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, where he earned a Bronze Star. Adam is an expert in renewable energy and is co-founder and CEO of Thermal Energy Storage of Maine. He has served on many community boards. In 2008, he ran for Congress, coming in second behind Shelley Pingree in a 6-way race. Donna Diane lives in Biddeford, and is Franco-American. She is married and a grandmother. Donna was 3-term mayor of the 6th largest community in Maine, Biddeford, and was simultaneously chair of the school committee, which is quite a feat. She has served in many community development organizations, and she says one word sums up her platform, and that word is respect. Mark Eves is married and the father of 3. He's worked as a trained family therapist, both a clinician and administrator for community health organizations across the state. Mark served for 8 years in the state legislature, including 2 terms as Speaker of the House. At their home in North Berwick, Mark and his family tend 4 goats, 2 pigs, and a coop full of chickens. Diane Russell of Portland served in the state legislature from 2008 to 2016. She has been on the forefront of reform efforts in the legislature and in the National Democratic Party, among them championing marijuana legislation, the elimination of superdelegates to the National Convention, net neutrality, and ranked choice voting. When Diane first ran for the State House in 2008, she was working as a cashier at a local convenience store. Mark Diane retired as Deputy Chief of Police after 21 years of public service to the citizens of Portland, during which time he was honored for work advancing the cause of civil rights by the NAACP, the Maine Gay and Lesbian Political Alliance, the Jewish Federation of Southern Maine, and the Maine Holocaust and Human Rights Center. He has served in the Maine legislature since 2010. Married and the father of two, Mark graduated from UMaine School of Law and passed the bar in Maine in 2006. Betsy Sweet is the single mother of 3 and lives in Hollowell. She's been an advocate for the interests of women, elderly, people with disabilities and mental health issues, the LGBTQ community, victims of abuse and discrimination, and the environment, as the founder and principal of Moose Ridge Associates, a lobbying firm. In 2007, Betsy went back to school to get her master's degree in spiritual psychology at the University of Santa Monica and has a counseling practice and coaching business. Betsy helped write Maine's first clean election law, and today is the only clean election Democratic candidate for governor. So now let me tell you how the forum will unfold. Each candidate will first start by giving us a 1-minute introduction. Then we'll have the first round in which each candidate will receive a question, and it's random to them. They have not seen these questions before. Only Janet Mills has seen a question. They'll have 2 minutes. They'll have 2 minutes to answer. Their answers will be timed, and if you want to hold up a yellow flag, you'll all be able to see. That means that they're getting close to the end. 30 seconds, and then the red flag means time's up. And if perchance the talk continues, there is a bell that will sound. So as I said, none of the candidates, except for Janet Mills, has seen the questions beforehand. Because we wanted to be able to include her, we did send her the questions earlier this week, and Kate will read her answers. Okay, after the first round, people will circulate to collect your questions, which I hope you are going to write on the yellow cards that were in your seat. And if you don't have a yellow card because you came in later, I think there's some on the table there, and maybe over there. So after the first round, those cards will be questioned. Those cards will be picked up, cards with questions. And we'll begin the second round. And in the second round, the candidates will each have 1.5 minutes to respond to any of the previous questions in however they would like to. So they don't have to just respond to something that they already answered. After the second round, there will be a short presentation about ranked choice voting. There will be a plea for donations to help cover this program's costs, and there will be a musical surprise. The third round is very similar to the first round, except we'll be using audience questions for the questions at that point. And again, candidates will have 2 minutes to answer. And then the last round, they'll have a chance to respond to any of those questions with 1.5 minutes. And for the closing, each candidate will answer the same question, and they'll have 2 minutes to do that. After the candidates for governor are finished, we do hope you'll stick around and talk with the local candidates, other Indivisible members. You will have a chance to make clean election donations. We have software over there, and if you haven't done that yet, you should do that for local candidates. And register to vote if you need to, and you can pick up information. Okay, are you guys all ready?
It's the last question, so they can be thinking about that.
He is such a softie. Okay, so there is a mic there, and you each are going to get a chance to give your 1-minute introduction.
Do you want to read? Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Kate is going to act as Janet Mills, so we'll hear hers first.
Could I have mine, please? I have neither rehearsed these or timed them, so please cut me off if I go over. All right. This is from Janet Mills. I grew up in a small town in western Maine with 3 brothers and a little sister. The people in my town did not like bullies, and they expected everybody to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. That's why, when I became district attorney, I personally took on tough cases of domestic violence. And when I saw that the legislature wasn't addressing issues of domestic violence and abuse, I co-founded the Maine Women's Lobby to give women a voice in the halls of the State House. Later, when I went on to become Attorney General, and Paul LePage wanted to take health care from thousands of children, I said no. We not only refused to represent him, we took the other side of the lawsuit and we won. After the financial crisis of 2008, I took on Wall Street giants Standard & Poor's and Moody's. And with those funds, I helped Maine homeowners fighting foreclosure stay in their homes. I want our state to be a place where every child will be safe and healthy, have access to a world-class education, where small businesses will thrive, where health care is affordable for everyone, and I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Okay, Donna, if you want to start, you can just go right down the line.
I'm definitely going to stand because no one will know I'm sitting here. I'm Donna Dion. I'm running for governor and I'm from Biddeford. I was born and raised in Biddeford, went to local schools and graduated with a degree from Machias. I went from Biddeford to Machias. Let me tell you, I experienced a lot of culture changes at that time. My platform is one word: respect. I was looking at what was taking place on the state level and said, we're not discussing issues. We're not moving ahead. What's missing? Respect. We need to start respecting and talking about issues and talking to each other, not talking about political tags or personalities. We need to be looking at what is needed by the people of the state. I was the mayor of Biddeford for 6 years, and I was very successful in implementing a lot of policies, environmental, economic, school. Remember, I was the chair of the school and also the mayor at the same time. 2 volatile groups, pull them together and make one budget. That's some of the basic foundation of where I come from. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. My name is Adam Cody. I'm from Sanford. My wife is a first-generation American. She's from Columbia, and we're raising a young family. Barb told you a little bit about my biography, so I won't get into that too much, except to say the common thread in my life and my wife's life have always been about public service, whether it's serving in a local school board, creating the Adopt an Iraqi Village program when I was serving overseas, or being recognized by President Obama as one of 12 people in the country recognized as a champion of change for my work on clean energy and climate change. What's been driving me to run, and that my wife and I talked about, is very similar to why this group was formed. It's not knowing whether what is happening in our country right now is a trend towards insulting people, towards what Governor LePage is doing and President Trump is doing with insulting teachers, healthcare workers, LGBT, go down the line, New Mainers, Native Americans, whatever it is. If that's going to be a trend in this country, I want to put a stop to it. I want to be a part of that. And that's why I'm running. I'm looking forward to the debate today. Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having us. I am Betsy Sweet, and as Adam said, you heard about our biography. I am in a great mood. We started this morning at 7:30 in Portland at a forum that went for 3 hours. But on my way here, I got to stop at Round Top for a milkshake. I saw an indigo bunting as I was driving, a beautiful, gorgeous bird. And then I got here, and they had a special parking spot for us. I feel like a queen. It's fabulous. So thank you for treating us so well. I'm running running because, I don't know, if you're like me, I want something different in politics. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and tinkering around the edges and think that we're going to get something different. I think we have an opportunity now, because it's so broken, to do something really different and to say enough. Clean elections is a huge part of that. Ranked choice voting is a huge part of that. But I think with my skills as a counselor, as a mom, and as an advocate who wrote the first Family Medical Leave Act in this country, in Maine and then for the country, I think I know someone who knows how to get things done by pulling people together. That's what I bring, and I can't wait to hear your questions. I look forward to this afternoon. Thanks.
Good afternoon, my name is Mark Eaves. I served in the state legislature for 8 years, 4 years as Speaker of the House. I was very honored to earn the support of my colleagues twice to be elected into that position. Well before I ever thought about getting into public office or running for public office, I entered the profession as a family therapist. And people have told me if at any point in time our state needed a family therapist after 8 years of Governor LePage, it is now. You know, the same reason I'm running for governor is the same reason I chose the profession I did, and that is to help people. When I was growing up, my parents told me, don't give up on people, especially when they're struggling. That's why I went into the profession I did. That's why I ran for the state house. That's why I ran for Speaker of the House. That's why I'm running for governor. We need somebody that is going to be a strong progressive to stand up to corporations, the wealthy and the well-connected, to make sure that we have universal health care for every citizen in our state, to make sure that our schools are fully funded, and that we're protecting our environment. We have so much work to do together. I hope that I can earn your support, and thank you for being here. This is inspiring, and we did start at 7:30 this morning, so if we look a little tired, that's why. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, Indivisible. Are you fired up? All right, let me do that again. Are you fired up? We are ready to take back the Blaine House, and we are going to do it the same way every single person in this room fought to save the Affordable Care Act for every citizen in this country. Thank you for your work. I think we have a unique opportunity to tear down this system that is rigged against us and build a new one. But we need someone who knows how to fix systems. When I introduced legalization, they told me I was crazy, that it was absolutely impossible. But I knew the communities of color were being arrested disproportionately. When I introduced ranked choice voting, they said, you're crazy, nobody's going to understand it. Not only did we get it on the ballot, not only did we get it passed, but in the middle of the governor's campaign, we quarterbacked it and we got it on the ballot a second time, and you were going to have ranked choice voting, so you don't have to just vote for one of us, you get to vote for 4 of us.
Good afternoon, Mark Dion. I'm a state senator from Portland. I grew up in Lewiston, where French was our primary language, in a 2-bedroom apartment, 5 of us, and then my parents. Okay, I grew up with the value that says, when you shake hands, you keep your word and you deliver. I grew up being told that you respect your elders and you look out for them. I grew up understanding that our first responsibility was for those who had less than us. And we didn't have much, but my parents said we had something, so share it. I'm running for governor for everyone who isn't here today. Those who have to work, those who are isolated, those who don't feel like they're part of the Democratic Party anymore. That's who I'm running for. The question for governor is not which one of the 6, but which one of us is willing to take this party back to its roots for working people and the disenfranchised. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now we'll start with the questions. Mr. Eaves, you're first. What is your plan for combating the effects of climate change on Maine? Will you sign Maine to the United States Climate Alliance that commits us to achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement?
Yes. So not only will I sign the U.S. Climate Alliance, I will make a pitch for Maine to be the chair of the Climate Alliance, because we need to reclaim our rightful place as a leader when we look at renewable energies. It is part of our brand, our ethos, who we are, to look out for our environment, and this is our opportunity to reclaim that. Whether it's solar, offshore wind, land conservation, all the catch-up that we need to do, we have a ton of work to do. So yes, I would sign on to the Climate Alliance, and also I would appoint PUC commissioners that believed in science, this novel concept. Start with the basics with that. And I would recruit a commissioner to DEP that believed in the mission of that department and public service. Those are the things that I would do.
The next question is for Janet Mills. What is your stance on universal background checks, including for gun shows, internet sales, and between private individuals? Should there be a waiting period before gun purchases? Should state or federal governments keep a registry of gun owners? And before I hand the mic to Kate, who is acting as Janet Mills, I want to remind candidates you have 2 minutes, but also you can circle back and answer one of these questions in round 2 if you feel it hasn't been answered thoroughly.
Okay, Janet writes, we can all agree on the need to keep guns away from dangerous people. That's why I testified in favor of Senator Dion's red flag bill to allow the courts to take guns away from people who are a danger to themselves or others. It's why in the legislature I work so passionately on the fight to take guns away from domestic abusers, a bill that to date has saved dozens, if not hundreds of lives. It's also why I believe everyone should have a background check before owning a gun. The difficult part is this. The issue was just on the ballot, and it failed. We talk a lot about respecting the will of the voters on Medicaid expansion, marijuana legalization, and education funding, and I don't think we can only make that argument when it's convenient. So the important question is, how do we move forward in our state to keep people safe? It's not just what position we support, but how do we get it done? When I talk to my neighbors in Franklin County, what I hear is that the 2016 referendum failed because it would have made harmless behavior like loaning a rifle to a friend while hunting a crime. Nobody reached out to the communities that actually own firearms, and as a result, the referendum went down in flames. I would be committed to bringing hunters, sports people, gun safety experts, and public safety advocates to the table to craft a background check bill that could win broad support. That's what I successfully did time and time again in the legislature, including on this subject, and that's what I would do as governor.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, Senator Dion. What will you do to facilitate in-home community services for seniors and people with disabilities?
You have the hello? Hello? The hell with it. Listen, the first part of that is vote for the referendum. Pass the home health care referendum. Right? That's number 2, when I became sheriff for 12 years, the very first thing I put on all my cruisers was a bumper sticker that said, protecting Maine's most important resource, our elders. Our elders are isolated, they're in pain, they're anxious about what tomorrow is going to bring. We cannot rely on a healthcare system based on the platform of a hospital. We need to provide leadership to bring care and humanity to the household. That's where it starts, that's where it's got to go. And I'll admit, I've been positively corrupted by my wife. I can compliment her. She's a community health nurse, and together we have shared common experiences. When you're on the street as a cop, you see the reality of government policies. We have forgotten that we will get old, all right? We don't believe it's going to happen to us. We have our duty of moral responsibilities to our elders, that we will not rip them out of their homes, and that they could actually realize something that looks like golden years. Because as my 87-year-old father tells me, they're not so golden these days, right? So that's what I'll do as governor. That is actually my primary strategy, is home health care. There are other crises we face, but if I can't answer the needs of our elder citizens, I will not done my due diligence to them. Thank you.
Technical difficulties. Betsy Sweet, you're next. A number of citizen-approved referenda have been thwarted by the governor's veto or the legislature. How will you ensure that these initiatives are implemented and that this kind of obstruction does not happen again? I'll give you the mic.
Thank you. Isn't it awful? Can you imagine that how many of you worked on one of the referendums last fall? Right? Medicaid expansion, anyhow, right? So we work, and not only do we work, but then people from Caribou to Kittery, all over the state, vote for all of them. And they go back to the legislature and they get turned over. And we heard things in the hallways like, voters didn't understand what they were voting for. Voters are stupid. Voters don't know what's going on. They don't really understand this. I don't think that's true. Voters know. And I think the thing that Janet wrote about us having to do it when it's hard, I think that's true too. But there is no way that the legislature should overturn what the voters say. Now, I want you to be really clear, us all, to be really clear, why we went out to referendum on these issues in the first place. Because we couldn't get it done in the legislature. And let's talk about why, my favorite subject. Money in politics. I have been an advocate for 35 years. I helped write the bill in 1996, and I will tell you, in that time, we thought it was a Republican problem. And in those 30 years, it has become very clear that it is not just a Republican problem. It pervades the entire system. So when we vote for a minimum wage, and then other people come in and say, oh no, business owners and restaurant owners come and say, no, don't do that. And oh, by the way, here's something for your campaign. And we overturn it, that system is very broken. Voters need to matter. And then we ask, why don't people vote? And we say, oh my goodness, young people aren't voting. Why? Because they vote, and then we overturn it and say, we don't care what you say. I think the most important thing to engage new voters and to get people to vote is that their vote matters, that they matter, that their lives matter. And that only happens when we respect the right of the voters and when we get money out of politics. Those two things are very related, and I will work very hard, either as governor or continuing as an advocate, to make sure that that happens.
Okay, next up is Diane Russell. How will you support a woman's right to control her own body and have access to abortion services? Can you find common ground with people with opposing viewpoints?
I can answer the last question first. No. This is part of a bigger issue around women's rights, and we are in the middle of the Women's March. There are a lot of women in this room, and this, I believe, is the first time where we have more women running for governor on the Democratic ticket than we have men, and I have to say, time is up. I am running not just to take care of the system and fix it, but to take care of the patriarchy, which is hurting women, men, boys, and girls. There's a reason that my bumper sticker says, fight like a girl. Because in this state, we're the state of Samantha Smith, who, because she had a mother who encouraged her to use her voice, wrote a letter that brought down the Cold War. It is not a coincidence that we have so many amazing women in this state, and why we have so many amazing Mainers in this state who stood up time and time and time again. But we have to have a conversation beyond just reproductive rights. We need to talk about pay equity, making sure that nurses and teachers don't get paid less as an industry simply because there's more women in it. We need to be talking about how women dance backwards and in high heels, and the women that ran for governor this year had to be 5 times as credible, 5 times as qualified to be taken half as seriously.
We dance backwards and in high heels, and it is time that we get some of the credit for the work that we do. That's at home. That's the extra coffee that you get for your boss. That's all those times when you had to bend over backwards and stay late at work and you didn't get paid for it. And then when you had the audacity to ask to be paid fairly, you were gaslit. It is time for women and girls to have full agency. And when that happens, men and boys will as well.
Adam Cody. Maine was once known for the outstanding quality of its K-12 education, but lack of funding and attacks on the Maine Education Association by the current administration have hurt our schools. How will you strengthen our K-12 system?
Thank you for the question. As somebody with 5 kids in these schools, I will tell you that it's a topic of discussion all the time. I was on the Sanford School Committee when Governor LePage got revenue sharing. And I come from a very lower income community. We have over 70% of our kids on free and reduced lunch. And we have a $30 million budget, and it was cut by over $1 million. We couldn't hire replacements for educators that were retiring. We had to cut arts programs. We had to cut sports programs. At the same time that an unfunded mandate was coming down from the state on proficiency-based learning, we couldn't send our educators to professional education to learn about this, to really understand best practices. I come from a family of teachers. My wife's a Spanish teacher. My dad taught at Sanford High for 30 years. We need to first fully fund universal pre-K in this state. It's your best dollar that you will ever invest in our kids. We have to fully fund our public schools, up to 55%, as it says under the law from 2003. We need to have leadership at our Commission of Education, more than the slew of commissioners we've had before. We need to focus more on STEM. We need to start getting our girls involved in STEM. I was at the robotics tournament, state championship, the New England Championship 2 months ago. It was in Lewiston. Maine teams came in the first 7 competitions, New England-wide. Maine won 4 of them. Our sponsors, Pat's Pizza, I like Pat's Pizza, but the state was not involved. We get more publicity in this state at high school basketball tournaments or football games on Friday night, and I grew up playing both of them. I love it, but you know what? We need a governor that supports education. I would fully fund it. I would have a terrific Commission of Education, and we would have universal pre-K when I'm governor. Thank you.
Donna Diamond, you must know that you're the next person. How will you find the funding necessary to undo the impact of the attacks of the LePage administration on essential health and social programs? Are you willing to raise taxes?
I'm willing to evaluate all the resources that we have. I'm not immediately one to raise taxes, but I have 20 years working with the Department of Health and Human Services. So I know firsthand where the cuts were. I know the vulnerable people who got hurt, the elderly, the children, the adolescents, and the programs that were eliminated. I was in a situation where I was stretching the dollar so that we didn't minimize the quality that we were trying to provide, the risk that were taken by businesses that weren't receiving enough money. So yes, would I be raising funds or looking for funds and evaluating where's the funds, how has it been spent, how do we spend them better, and what kind of impact we'll have? Absolutely. Because I spent 20 years chasing the state of Maine, asking those questions, and it's time to audit them, it's time to find out where the money is, and it's time to put it where the people need it. And to take care of those children, those elderly people, those adults, those people with mental challenges, physical challenges, and it goes through a whole set of things. Our veterans, our individuals who are elderly and left alone. There is money that needs to be placed there. Will I hit you with taxes first? That's not the direction we should go. We should be auditing what we have for money, auditing our Medicaid account, and putting that money to better use, and looking at who are we giving our special credits for taxes. How long have they had it? Is it doing us any good? Is it providing additional businesses? Or could we be taking that and getting them to pay the taxes so we can invest it in places that will be more effective, more responsible? So taxes is not my first location. My first location is let's look at the money we have and let's use it more effectively. And let's be respectful and take care of the people that we need to be taking care of. Thank you.
Okay, that ends round one. And in the next round, as I said earlier, the candidates will each have 1.5 minutes to respond to any of those questions that were just asked. While they're taking a breath and maybe stretching a little bit, I want to make sure that people are comfortable with the temperature because we have an open door. Are you warm enough back there? Is it okay? Seems to be okay? All right. Okay, so I'm going to call on you and candidates one at a time, and you'll have a chance to... Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes. We also need to collect the audience's questions at this point. You'll see people coming around to collect them.
I don't know, we'll have to do it without house.
You have them pass for one end.
Yeah, pass them to one end. I'll come down the middle.
Okay, we'll wait a minute because there's too much confusion.
Margaret, tell them to pass them to the end.
Yes, pass your yellow slip to the end if you've written a question on it or have information. If you need a yellow card, I think there's some at the back table there, or at this table here, way over at the end. Okay. All right. First up is Adam Cody.
All right.
And you have 1.5 minutes to speak.
Well, I got to admit, a lot of really good questions. I was tempted on the climate change one because I spend most of my time working on that. Or the guns issue, I'm strong proponent of universal background checks and others that we need to do. I've spent a lot of time with firearms in my life. But I would like to acknowledge the fact that I'm running in this race with 4 very accomplished, phenomenal women. And it has been a good time during this race. We genuinely enjoy each other's company, and they're very accomplished. And I strongly support a woman's right to make her own health care decisions. I support equal pay for equal work. And I've been honored to receive the endorsement of many former or current leaders that are women in the state, legislators, business leaders, etc. But I wanted to get back to my introductory about the trend that we're going in. And I have a different vantage point because I've been around the world, not just in the military, but I've worked overseas. I've helped write energy laws in other countries. I was in Haiti soon after the earthquake. I've seen societies where, such as in Afghanistan, where women's rights are way sliding back, right? I mean, in the Stone Ages. And when we start getting towards that in this country, when people have to fight for rights they fought for in the 1960s, it's part of that trend I'm really worried about. I fully support family planning. I fully support Planned Parenthood. And I would be a strong advocate for women's rights as well. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Betsy Sweet.
Thanks. We're trying to sit here and figure out a way to weave them all together, right? But I want to say that as a former commissioner for women under 2 governors, a Democratic governor, a Republican governor, the issue of women's rights is something, I'm a mother of 3 daughters. The issues of women's rights are something I've dedicated my life to. And you know what? It makes me so sad that 35 years after starting at the Maine Women's Lobby and the Commission for Women, we are still fighting so many of those same battles. And if you look nationally, even on reproductive choice, we are seeing ourselves go backwards, not forwards. That's not okay. We have to have equal pay. We have to support Planned Parenthood, all of those things that you know and I bet we all agree on. I want to talk, though, about something that I think is even more important, or not even more important, also important, which is, I think, as we see the Women's March and Time's Up and Me Too, one thing that's happening is that women are finding our voice. That it's not just about women and women running, or women being in leadership. That's important, but we are looking at the values that women have traditionally had, and that is what is starting to get its voice among everybody. We need men who also support those things, like we have up on this stage. We need to value the things that we've cared about. So when we look at funding for HHS, we choose to feed hungry children before we give tax breaks to the rich. So that when we look at education, we're smart enough in education to say, okay, when I went into a school, I went to a high school, I said, who's happy here? Nobody raised their hand. And so that's not okay. We have to figure that out. When we're smart, we know how to do that. The last thing I would just say very quickly is that when we look at guns, imagine if we came to the table around guns, around our children's safety, and not based on our funding source. That's what we can bring to the table, and that's why we have to do it.
Next up is Donna Dion.
Oh, sorry.
That passed it.
You know, I have 45 years of intensive business and political experience in finance. And women's rights are really, 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 really important to me. In '97, when I was running to be mayor of the 6th largest community, people said they took bets. Give her 3 months. She's a woman. She's too short. She doesn't have the grit, you know, and she doesn't have that power. And what ended up at the end of 6 years, I left because I couldn't live on $10,000. My husband and I had pretty much taken care of all of our savings on giving me that permission. We need to push ladies to say, you can do whatever you want to do. I developed so many friendships and support because I would not move. It's a joke. I have big ears because I listen really well. I watch everything that's going on, but I'm very quiet, but I have a big heart because I really care about the cities, the people, the state. I give 100% to everything I do. But I like to tell you, I don't care how short I am, I have huge feet because I don't get run over. And I don't move. And if there's an issue, I am consistent, I am persistent, and I don't stop until we get the right people at the table, we resolve that problem, and we move forward. Thank you.
The next person up is Janet Mills, or Kate as Janet Mills.
We did not give Janet a choice on her second question, so we just picked one out of a hat and sent it to her. So what we sent her was the one about the overturning of citizen initiatives. So what she wrote is, I've consistently taken the position that we need to respect the will of the voters, and that is what I would do as governor. That said, I believe that much of the reason we've seen an explosion in the use of the referendum process is that voters are responding to a dysfunctional culture that has repeatedly failed to take necessary action. More than anything else, this problem stems from Governor LePage's insistence on governing by veto, instead of providing real leadership. Even when legislators have compromised and worked across the aisle and crafted bipartisan bills, LePage has used the veto power indiscriminately on everything from Medicaid expansion to allowing the families of addicts to buy the overdose antidote Narcan, adding up to more than 450 vetoes in total, a historical record. In a Mills administration, that will not be a problem. Like I said earlier, I believe the way we get things done is to bring people to the table and work together to chart the path forward. That's how I operated in the legislature, and that's what I will do in the Lane House.
Okay, next, Mark Dion, you are up. minute and a half. That's Dion to Dion.
It's like a slow motion track team, right? I'm coming.
Respect, remember, it's respect here.
I get it, I've heard the tagline so many times. Listen, when I was sheriff, I managed a $20 million budget. Inside a budget, it was really a choice between good and bad, but two competing goods, and how I would fall down on that decision, and then be able to sell it to the commissioners and to taxpayers in the county. That's what happens in Augusta. It's not good and bad, it's good and good, and then we have to try to sell it to the Republicans. It's not an easy task. I could comment on every one of these questions, but I'm going to go to the hardest part of the case, which the lawyer B tells me has to be addressed. It's school funding. I won't dance about it. We have to raise taxes. We have the schools we want. And the schools our children deserve. I don't dance. I don't have time. I'm getting elderly. The question about taxes is who will we tax? And I say we tax those who have more and those who should feel a responsibility to the common good, and they've escaped that to the tune of $440 million. The trouble with being a sheriff, you don't have time for a task force or fancy talk. When you call 911, you expect a direct answer. You'll always get that from me. So that's what has to occur. And I need the taxes to give teachers the wages they deserve with a base pay of at least $40,000. We entrust our children to them, and we pay them as if it's fast food education. And that has to stop. Okay, so those are two critical things. And I make another note here I should know. Yes, I'll repeal the Page's tax cuts. All right? Listen, I'm going to defend legislators for just a... As a sheriff, you enforce the rules, so maybe I should follow them.
Just hold on to it for a minute, Mark. Betsy Sweet, you are up.
I already was. But I'm
No,
happy to go down.
no, it must be Diane.
We get that a lot.
I'll dance with you, Mark. You know, growing up in a trailer in Bryant Pond, we had the last crank phones in the country, some of you may recall. So I didn't ever expect to get listened to. But I also didn't expect that when Maine people went to the ballot box time and time and time again, because as was pointed out previously, the legislature and the governor, mainly the governor, were not able to come to an agreement on basic things that people wanted. I was astonished, because I worked just as hard as you did. I've been leading the fight for ranked choice voting since 2007, long before I even knew who Paula Page was. I've been leading ranked choice marijuana legalization long before Colorado and Washington State thought it was cool, and certainly before John Boehner did. There's a lot of jobs in that, by the way. But it astonished me last April, about a year ago, when I started seeing time and time and time again the 3% tax. We already funded education. We decided that we wanted to tax the rich to make sure that our kids had a good education, and they repealed it. It's crap.
Yeah.
Who was that? Say it again. That's it, sir. We're looking at repealing of pieces of the minimum wage. We're talking about repealing outright ranked choice voting. We had to take it to the ballot box again, then we had to take it to court, then the Senate sued the state people of Maine to try to stop it, and now they're taking it to the federal courts. At every step of the way, we've been fighting. But this is not the way democracy is supposed to work. This is not the way democracy is supposed to work, but this is.
Okay, Mark, you know
So I think I'm going to choose the senior home care question. It's an issue that I worked on for 4 years when I had the opportunity in the Speaker's office. My dad is going to turn 95 this fall. I either look, yeah, I'm not going to make that joke. So he had me when he was much older in his life, and when I got, is this being recorded? I really need to know this right now. But it is something that I have personally seen. My parents just sold their house. It had 3 stories. They couldn't get around it anymore. They needed to buy a single-level family house, and they just did. They're moving. Like so many Mainers, that this is a big issue. That's why I decided to focus on it when I had the opportunity. I see Cheryl Russ in the audience. The first thing that we did was have a series of roundtables, speakers roundtables, to really get our arms around this issue. That's where I learned that 50% of our workforce is going to retire in 10 years. It's pretty alarming. That's where it was reaffirmed that how many seniors are being taxed out of their homes. So we worked together and we put forward what we call the Keep Me Home initiative. What we did was we passed a senior affordable housing bond. Passed at the ballot, now it sits on the governor's desk. He won't build that when 10,000 Maine seniors wait on a wait list. It will be the first thing that I do if I'm fortunate enough to win. We increased wages. We increased wages for workers and home health care workers. We need to do a lot more, but it was a start. And we made sure that we were addressing property taxes. If we're going to say something about who we are as people in a society, we have to take care of our seniors. That will be the first down payment of doing right by seniors, and there's a whole host of other things we need to do. But what I know about any issue that we work on, it's never about one person. It's not about any one of us. It's about a big team, and it's about you engaging in the process. So there's a lot of work to do, and this is, I think, top of the list.
Thank you very much. So we're halfway through, and the candidates are going to get a little break. There's chocolate on the table for them, or water, whatever. And we're going to have a presentation on ranked choice voting by Major M.D. Mitchell from the Maine National Guard. He's retired. Known by his friends as Mitch, he is from Scarborough, but he used to live not too far from here in Walpole. He's a volunteer for More Voice, whose mission is to educate people about ranked choice voting. He served in the Maine Army National Guard as a combat engineer, retiring at the rank of major, and served 2 tours of duty in Iraq as well as humanitarian work in Guatemala. He was also a foreign service officer for the U.S. Department of State, serving in Washington, D.C., Brazil, and Guyana. Prior to that, he was the director of education at the Wolfsneck Farm Foundation in Freeport. Mitch was also a classroom teacher who taught U.S. history and English to speakers of other language in Maine and in Japan. He lives with his wife and has 2 adult children. He's passionate about remaining true to the founding ideals of America, the ones written on paper about a more perfect union and securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Please welcome Major Mitch Mitchell.
I've been giving these talks around the state of Maine about ranked choice voting, and the biggest group I've had so far is 15 people. So this is a little overwhelming. So I apologize if I'm a little nervous. And my mother's here as well, so I got that too. So we the people, that's us. In order to form a more perfect union, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That is what we are about as a nation. And when they wrote those words, only land-owning white men could vote. We've come a long way. We should give ourselves a hand, right? Good job, everybody. But we have maybe further to go, and there's many issues yet to be addressed. And one of those is ranked choice voting. 383,660 Mainers came out to vote in November of 2016 to say, we would like to try something new. something most of us have never used except the people of the city of Portland who've used it twice. In the city of Portland, where they've used it twice, they experienced it, over 71% of the people voted for it. Statewide, 52% of the people voted for it. But here we are. We have to vote on it again. And I've been giving these talks, and I understand that many people in the state of Maine do not understand that they have to come out and vote again. So on June 12th, whether you agree with ranked choice voting or not, you need to come out to vote again. The question is worded in a very unusual way because the question is to affirm a veto of a legislative action to delay what the people voted for in 2016. Now, I was a history teacher, not so much a grammar teacher, but I'm going to simplify it for you and say if you support ranked choice voting, you need to vote yes on question 1 on June 12th. And if you don't, you will vote no. So, just yesterday, the Secretary of State, by emergency rules, approved the actual rules, and I have them here today. They're available on the Secretary of State's website. You can go yourself and look under current elections, but I wanted to inform the group here of a couple very important parts of ranked choice voting so you understand the process that will be used, and at the same time you're going to vote on it to decide if you want to keep using it as a state. Overvoting, same as what we have now. If you vote for the candidate multiple times, you can invalidate your ballot for future rounds. The best thing you can do in ranked choice voting is figure out these candidates in the order you like them, and start with 1, then rank the next one 2, then 3, then 4, then however many. And the rules say you will get to rank as many candidates as are running, including a write-in. If you skip a ranking and you vote like 1, 3, 4, the rules say no problem, they'll just count your number 3 as your next ranking. But if you skip 2 and go say 1, 4, 5, because maybe you're like, I like one a lot and I really don't like the other, so I'm going to skip 2 and 3, you will invalidate your ballot for anything past the first vote. So my advice to you, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat in your primary, is just vote them in the order you prefer them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're not weighted. Your 1, your 2 is the same if someone votes 1 and skips 1 and 3. So just vote them the way you like them, the way you prefer them, and the system will work as intended. Now, I hope you will understand that this is primarily a primary election in June, so a lot of your friends and neighbors will not know that they need to come out to vote. So it's very important that when we leave here today, as part of We the People, we inform others that June 12th, even if they're not a Democrat or Republican, even if they don't like to vote, are disenfranchised, they feel dissatisfied with the system, they're independent, there is a reason to vote to improve the way we vote, to give us more choice and more voice in our votes, for our votes to have more value when there's a large field of candidates. So I hope you will not only vote yourself on June 12th, but get as many people as you can to understand that improving our democracy is at stake. Now, some of the candidates already talked about it, so I'm going to edit my comments short, plus everyone maybe likes to get home earlier. I'm going to be over at that table. If you have more questions, I will stay as long as necessary to answer any and all questions about ranked choice voting. And I swear to you, I will give you the straight, honest truth, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there are a lot of people who are unfortunately trying to confuse the process. So I'm here to help. I'm here to give you the straight truth, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mitch.
Nigel is...
No,
Okay.
aren't we?
I guess this is us, yeah.
So we have something a little bit silly.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I used to live in Alma, and we had a tradition at our town meetings. Someone would get up and sing an old-timey ballad. So, and it's always the best part of the meeting. It's the only part you remember. So I went through the musical archives of really old-timey ballads, and I found one that I thought was appropriate for today. It's called The Ballad of Ranked Choice Voting, a tragedy in 3 acts with redemption. And I invite you all to join us on the choruses. And I have behind me compounds the Rankettes who are ready to go. The Rankettes, yes, yes. And I think I'll do this without a microphone so that we'll all kind of blend. Oh, and RCV means ranked choice voting when you do that. So, thank you. All right, so I'll put this down, turn it off. Don't turn it off? Okay. All right, so why don't we, let's come over here. I did not pick a key, so I reserve the right to change key as I'm singing.
And you should join in on the chorus.
Right,
once
yes,
you get
please
the
do.
hang of it.
Right, let's sing. Okay. Many, many years ago when I was quite naive, I chanced to meet a Democrat with nothing up her sleeve. She wanted to be governor, and so I thought, did I? But then this independent guy, he kind of caught my eye. Well, I stayed with my party, because I always have been true. But many, many of my friends said that's not what they do. So back and forth we tossed our votes until the day it came. They counted up our ballots. We'd elected what's his name? No! We won RCV. We won RCV. It sounds funny, I know, but the people will show you that we won RCV. Oh, 7 years have come and gone now since that tragic day. Along the way, us voters, well, we had some things to say. We passed a referendum back in 2016 by the second largest margin that the state has ever seen. What? Up then stepped the Supreme Court and said, hey, not so fast. Your bill, it needs some fixing or it's never gonna last. Our legislators in their wisdom voted to repeal. The people up and vetoed them with overwhelming zeal. Yay! We've got RCV, at least we think so. We've got RCV. It sounds funny, I know, but the people will show you that we got RCV. But then the state decided not to act, and so we sued. We won! And then the GOP decided to be rude. They told the court to shut us down and then sat down to gloat. Guess what?
They lost!
We're on the ballot, now you get to vote! Yay! Vote for RCV! Yes, on one! Vote for RCV! June 12th! It's funny, I know, but the people have shown you to vote for RCV!
Okay, so now this is slightly more serious. I'm going to turn it over to Nigel.
Thank you. Now that we've got you all fired up, we're going to raid your wallets. We're going to pass around some hats, and we'd appreciate any donations that you care to give us. And if a hat doesn't come your way, we have a donation jar on the way out. And while we're doing that, I'm going to just raise a couple of points. We're in a rather unique position here in Maine and in Lincoln County. Unlike those that are in solidly red or blue states, we're in a state where we have a number of really critical races that could actually change the course of history. We, for example, if we re-elect the Democrat in District 1, we managed to help District 2 to unseat Bruce Poliquin, we could help to flip the House. If we can make sure we get a progressive elected in Senator King's seat, and the Democrats can pick up a couple more Senate seats, we can flip the Senate. If we can flip the House and Senate, we can rein in Donald Trump for the rest of his administration. So, at the local level, we have a fantastic suite of candidates for governor. We can take the governor's house, the Maine House, in the next election. We have a number of tough House races, and they're on the back of your agendas. Many of those people are seeking clean elections funding. We need to give them all the help we can. So it's up to all of you to go here to one of these computers where you can sign up for clean elections funding. And what you do, you give $5 for each candidate in your district that you want to support, and then they get matching dollars from the state. And in particular, we have the opportunity to help flip the Senate in Maine by electing Laura Fortman in District 13. Get in getting clean elections contributions. So make sure every one of you is signed up to donate the $5 to our campaign. And collectively, between us, we have the capacity to change several seats, which in turn has the capacity to change history. It's up to all of us to do what we can to make this happen. So you all have on your seats, I hope, sign-up cards for the Indivisible, either Booth Bay or Lincoln County. If you didn't, we've got sign-up sheets at the door. Before you leave, make sure you've signed up, and as we get closer into election season, we're going to call on you to do door-to-door canvassing, to do phone banking, to do voter registration, and to do all those other things that we need to do to make sure that we win in these seats. So thank you very much. I would like to say one more thing. You can tell by my accent that I'm actually not from Maine. I'm an immigrant. I'm one of the lucky ones. I look kind of Norwegian.
So we have some fabulous questions from the audience. And I want to start actually with a question that we knew was coming. Is Riley Stevenson here? Oh, there you are. Riley, would you like to ask your question? And this question will go to Betsy Sweet.
So as one of the organizers of Lincoln Academy's gun safety walkout, it should come as no surprise that this question relates to gun safety. So as governor, how would you work to improve gun legislation to ensure student safety in schools?
Thank you so much. And first of all, let me say thank you to you and to all the amazing young people all over this country who have stood up and said to the adults, enough, enough avoiding this question. Yes. And we're avoiding this question because politicians are afraid. We are afraid of the NRA. We are not afraid, and it's related to money in politics, right? I'm sorry to say it, but it is. And it's not that any of us are going to get money from the NRA. But politicians are so afraid in this state of the negative ads that they're going to do, of how they're going to attack us. One of the first things people say to you when you run for office is, don't talk about guns. Whatever you do, don't talk about guns. I've been working on safe gun legislation for 20 years. I started back with Gun Control Inc. back in the day. And then when the Las Vegas shootings happened and the Pulse shootings happened, I asked all the candidates in the state of Maine to please say that they wouldn't take any more gun money. So I think that's first. I think then we have to bring people together, and we do have to talk to people from all sides. I had a conversation with a guy in Lewiston who said, I'm a Second Amendment guy. And I said, do you have kids? He said, yes. I said, I'm sure you don't want your kids shot at a concert or at school or anywhere else any more than I do. I said, imagine if we had a conversation in Maine about how do we keep our kids safe and not our funding source. Then I think we would get to common sense on banning assault weapons. Then I think we would get to common sense on not selling guns to kids under 21. Then I think we get to common sense on Mark's red flag bill. And really looking at, you have to have a license to drive a car in Maine. You have to have a license to, do things that are a lot less dangerous than owning a weapon and owning an assault weapon. We have to look at some of those things. We had a couple of us had the opportunity to listen to some young people the other day at this Can We project, and they had 8 policy initiatives on guns that were all common sense. They brought people together, and we had it, so there was 21-year-olds, it was a waiting period, it was universal background checks, it was banning assault weapons, and they all, conservative and liberal kids, self-defined, all agreed on that. I think we have a long way to go, and lots of things we can do right away, but we have to stop being afraid of talking about this issue. We've got to go head on and talk about it and get it done. Thank you for your leadership.
Okay, the next question, and these are 2-minute questions, so I hope I was clear about that, goes to Diane Russell. Diane, the Trump administration is pressuring states to use resources to assist ICE in rounding up immigrants. Some states are resisting, some are complying. Where do you stand on this, and how do you think we should deal with undocumented immigrants?
Thank you. I'm really excited about this question. Before I answer it, I just want to say thank you. I know this song was so beautiful. And it was fun, and it was uplifting, and I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer, but I gotta thank you from the bottom of my heart, because those of us that have been fighting so hard and have been told that we couldn't do this, and every time we win to be told that we're not allowed to do it, it just makes my heart sing so deeply to see that all of you stepped up, and that was just beautiful. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for fighting for my true story. But the ICE issue also hits me really personally. I was just with my dear friend Sandra yesterday. A year ago, her husband was deported to Guatemala. She's from here. She's born and raised in Maine, just like many of us. And she happened to fall in love with an undocumented worker who had fled in his teens from Guatemala from the Civil War. And when he was in his teens, they told him, don't talk to anybody, just stay in the shadows. And so he did. And they tried time and time and time again to get him into a legal status. And in April of last year, he was arrested off the streets. We know we've heard that before, right? And a month later, and I stepped in to try to help her, but there was nothing we could do. And we sat there and we were talking to Channel 6 and NECM yesterday about what it's been like for her to have her entire world stolen in a matter of minutes. And what it's like to actually be able to look back and say a year has passed. These raids are unconscionable. You should be able to get on the bus and not have to worry about having your paperwork with you. You shouldn't have to carry your birth certificate around with you. And our law enforcement in Maine should not be working to arrest Maine people. That is just wrong. And we should be supporting our dreamers, right? We should be supporting our dreamers. We need a leader who stops demonizing people and starts lifting us all up, because as long as we are divided again around racial and ethnic and faith lines, we are not going to be united against the real enemy, which is the corporate ownership of every country in this world.
I think that's the first time I've ever seen a candidate in tears. Thank you, Diana. This question is for Adam. Cody, how would you assess our current governor's efforts to reduce domestic violence in Maine? And what would you do differently? It wasn't meant to be funny.
Well, I will say I've been asked several times to say something nice about Governor. We get that sometimes. And I've said, I have admired how he has spoken up against domestic violence, because it's something that he went through in his life, but he hasn't done anything to address it. He's hollowed out DHHS, Child Protective Services. We know the stories that have happened here. It's been awful. How would I address it? We've got to start funding Child Protective Services. We have got to start funding DHHS. We've got to have comprehensive gun issues, gun control issues. We have a low violent crime rate, but we have a very high rate of domestic violence in the state of Maine. That comes from education. That comes from counseling. That comes from being able to have the people there that can identify these problems, whether it's in schools or whether it's in society. And we have, what Governor LePage has done is he has spent so much time vilifying people in this state of Maine, whether it's teachers, we've talked about new Mainers, we've talked about native tribes. Native tribes, the Penobscot tribe in the state of Maine, 1 out of 3 women can expect to be sexually assaulted. 70% of them are from non-tribal members. It's a massive issue. The relationship with the state and the tribes right now has never been worse, and it's never been good. This is a great opportunity. I try to look at opportunities as governor to follow Governor LePage. We need somebody that's going to come in there, that's going to talk about the future, that's going to talk about healing this problem that's going on, that's endemic in our society right now, where we're having people scapegoating, blaming the single mom in Buxton or the scary immigrant. We're not addressing the real society problems we have here in this state, and that's what I do as governor. Thank you.
This is a question for Donna Diane. What is the first environmental issue you will address, and how will you address it?
I am very super sensitive to air. Okay? I have induced asthma, so I know what kinds of problems could exist. One of the first things I addressed when I became mayor, we had an incinerator in Biddeford. And so I look at how many smokestacks and how many processing plants are occurring and what is falling on our plants and what's falling in our community and how many kids have inhalers and how that has grown. Well, I addressed that situation. And I brought to the table key individuals in the community, chemical engineers and environmental attorneys. And we discussed what we were seeing, and we went head on with them. And we created the strongest environmental air toxic ordinance in the state of Maine at that time. And with people from the state calling me and saying, let it go, let it go. I can't be bought by people who have more power because they have more money. We were talking about people. It wasn't just Biddeford. That was being drifted all over our communities, our surrounding communities. So air that protects our future. Air is important, but that also impacts water in the various areas. So we're working on water. When you're looking at air, you impact plants, the trees, the farms, everything. So that's my key thing, is stressing with DEP that we need to be stronger in how we're monitoring processes that are taking place. You know, people said all these businesses are going to leave. We had 21 businesses that showed up with 21 lawyers. And within 6 months, we had got to a happy medium. And we're still, today, monitoring these people. And that's a big concern of mine. And that's what I would be looking at initially on environmental issues. Thank you.
This question is for Mark Eves. How will you change the economic outlook and opportunity to attract young workers to Maine?
This is, I do think, people ask me, what is your top priority? What would you do first? This has to be at the top of the list. There are so many issues, and we've talked a lot about them, and what our priorities are for the state. But if we don't provide a future for kids to stay here that they can see themselves in, the opioid crisis is going to continue. Our kids are going to leave our state, and we're not going to be able to replace those 50% of workers in 10 years that are retiring. This is the biggest challenge for our state. 2 things that I would do in terms of keeping kids like mine here in this state. In 10 years, my kids will be 23, 21, and 18. It's nothing more than I want for them to be able to find their future right here in this state. We have to make sure that we are making a robust investment in our vocational training programs at the high school level, investing in the trades again, and not believing that the only way to economic prosperity is with a 4-year degree or more. If we do that well and we align what the workforce needs are per industry, per region, per vocational training program, we're going to be creating more programs like the two that I was involved in the Speaker's office. One was with a logging training program in the northern part of the state, worked with 30 different logging contractors to develop that. Right now, it's rotating between 3 community colleges, Northern Maine Community College, Eastern Maine Community College, and Western Maine Community College. It has a 100% job placement rate, where these young students are graduating and getting hired immediately into the profession. They're starting out making $40,000 a year. They work overtime, it could be $50,000 a year. And that is enough money to buy a house in a region of the state that they want to plant roots. That's how you start to create a vision and a future for kids to see themselves in it, and that's what we need to do. That's what I'd do as governor.
And Mark Dion, let's see, I have a card here. Okay, the opioid problem is a huge crisis. What do you intend to do about it if you're governor?
The answer doesn't lie with me, it lies with all of us. Right? The governor alone cannot do this. There's a lot of conversation about Narcan and intervention and strategies that deal with the immediate. I want you to consider the fact that what drives addiction is there's a lot of pain in our communities. There's physical pain, there's psychic pain, there's emotional pain. People just don't get up in the morning and decide I'm going to be an addict, right? There's something that drove them there. We're told the story that I got here through my doctor. That's a physical pain issue. Many drift into addiction for those other reasons as well. Second, being an addict does not make you a moral failure. It doesn't make you or your family a moral failure. Third, we have to have a long-term strategy. Recovery isn't a fix. It's a journey that goes as long as the person is alive, and we have to recognize that. As governor, I will work with municipal officials. The answer is local, community-based. We have to change ordinances so that we welcome recovery households, because what the addiction does to the addict is take away their dignity and their connection to other sober human beings, and therefore we need to reconnect that. Recovery housing is a strategy that I believe will do that, but it needs one other piece. For those of you that are small business people, you need to commit with us. It's not a police issue, it's an us issue. You have to open your doors to employment to people that you know will fail. There's a lot of recovery is failure till you find your way. And we need employment that recognizes the path to recovery and supports it. Thank you.
And the last question, which obviously didn't come from the audience today, is for Janet Mills, and Kate will answer it. The question is, Maine has seen nearly 50,000 workers leave the workplace since 2006, and will see further declines as baby boomers retire. Tourist businesses can't find seasonal workers, and Maine companies say they have markets and could expand, but they can't find the people to do it. How will you address Maine's labor shortages, perhaps the biggest barrier to economic development?
Janet writes, first, we need to encourage young families to move to Maine. That means ensuring our communities have great schools, that we market our unique quality of living, and that we probably should take certain bumper stickers off our cars. You know the ones. Second, we need to welcome new Mainers who are also new Americans. A significant portion of the gap between our birth and death rate is being filled by immigrant families, who are increasingly critical to our economy as well. We need to expand access to English classes and provide programs to help people convert professional certifications and qualifications from other countries to ones they can use here. We also need to stand up to the Trump administration's hateful and xenophobic policies. That's why, as Attorney General, I've gone to court to stop the repeal of DACA and the ban on immigration from Muslim countries. Third, We need to ensure the workforce we have lines up with our economic needs. We should invest in retraining and professional development programs, as well as our community colleges and vocational education centers. We also should make sure that critical computer science and programming skills are being taught as early as middle school.
So here comes the fourth round, and you each get 1.5 minutes to respond to any of the previous questions. And we'll start this time with Diane Russell.
So many good questions. I'm going to stick with the economy and young workers. So first and foremost, as a member of the younger generation, we have to address student loan debt. You know, when I first graduated from college, a bunch of upstarts and I started a signature drive, that was the theme, that would create the Opportunity Maine program. And now college graduates from 2008 forward can actually take a dollar-for-dollar tax credit against their student loan payments. We have one of the best financial aid programs in the country for tuition. But there's still a generation that, like myself, who has been saddled with student loan debt. And we talk a lot about the interest rates. We actually have to address the principal balance, because the principal balance is so out of control that I can't keep up with that, and I can't even have children because I can't afford them. I can't afford to buy a house, and I'm not the only one. And so you want to keep your kids and your grandkids in this state. We have to figure out how to address student loan debt. 2, I legalized marijuana. That's going to bring some young people. And believe it or not, there's a lot of baby boomers that tell me how grateful they are. And you should also look at it through the economy. Millions of dollars are being invested right now. You cannot get real estate, warehouse real estate in southern Maine. And hundreds of jobs have been created, and those jobs are going to move to rural parts of the state. The other thing we need to think about is the fact that we need to stop closing rural elementary schools, because how are we going to attract young people if there are no schools for their kids? And finally, we need a new Maine deal, once and for all, that it puts universal single-payer health care at the forefront. That is how we're going to build an economy that works for everyone and attracts young people like myself and the generation behind me to not just come to this state, but to stay and work in the state we grew up in and love so dearly.
The young people, obviously, I think what we have to do is immediately start working with the universities, and in my preparation for this and getting signatures and whatever else, I spent some time talking to like the University of New England, the University of Southern Maine, some of the technical schools to find out how can we make a collaboration, a connection of the individuals and what they're taking for courses and relate to what kind of businesses are out there. So people are not taking their courses thinking, I need to go to Massachusetts, I need to go to New Hampshire. How do we keep them here in the state? Well, at the same time, obviously, we got to be increasing the wages and entry levels of individuals. But some of these individuals who have special talents and that are going to vocational schools, some of them never get beyond the centers of technology in high school. And that is great, because they're the individuals who are going to get certifications and licenses for plumbing, electricity, carpenters. Try to find some of these individuals now. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg because you're going to wait forever. But at the same time, look at the college courses and say, what does a finance person, where do they fit in the business? They don't have to go to a financial institute. They can go to any business and acquire a good business. So let's get paid internships. So these individuals start working and already find out what it is to stay right here and to develop some kind of livelihood right here and not have to go away. I mean, our assets and their livelihoods should be here, and we should be that destination. Thank you.
And Senator Mark Dion.
Oh, I'm running
Oh, sorry.
She has big feet. Covers a lot of territory. All these questions were really good, but I think I'm going to go to the Trump ICE one for a moment. Remember I told you an earlier story about part of the challenge is picking between two goods? Public never knows that's the choice. Same here. In the early 80s when I was a street detective, our first wave of Cambodian and Vietnamese families were coming into Portland. And they were preyed upon by organized Asian criminals coming out of Metro Boston. We had to work with ICE to protect their interests. We had to work with federal authorities. If it's a random, arbitrary roundup, it's wrong and we should stand firm against it. But I want to tell you that the reality of public safety requires a partnership between state and federal authorities. As a governor, I would ask my Attorney General to sit with the U.S. Attorney and work out a mutual agreement, a memorandum of understanding of how we're going to do this. I will stand for sheriffs, like Sheriff Brackett over there. He's a good guy, vote for him too. I want him to expect the rule of law to apply to his federal counterparts. I think that's critical. They can't just call and say hold. They need to show paperwork to do that. But really, all of this is code for the reality that this state needs its own immigration policy. The feds have walked away from it. As governor, I will walk up to it. We need it not just for issues of public safety. There are over 48,000 visas that need to be granted for our business interests in the state and to protect new Mainers arriving. And we have to have a coordinated strategy from the Blaine House to achieve those goals. Thank you.
So I'm tempted to talk about domestic violence and my work in getting the only one-time $4 million investment in domestic violence about 20 years ago. But I really want to talk about climate change in the environment. Because if we don't deal with that, a lot of these issues don't matter. But I want to actually talk about something positive. My grandpa was a lobsterman out on North Haven Island. And my buddies out there who are still lobster, women and men, they see what's happening with ocean acidification, ocean warming. But I want to talk about something positive. Let's talk about what we can do about that. My sister works for a company called Ecovative, and what they're doing is they're looking at the substrate of mushrooms, mycelium under the mushrooms, to grow it into forms to replace styrofoam, right? So that instead of having stuff come in packaging that's styrofoam that lasts for 3 million years, has a half-life of 3 million years, it comes in this styrofoam that's an alternative packaging. When you get it, you throw it in your garden and it composts. It's unbelievable. They're now doing it with Ford Motor Company for door panels. They're using it to replace plywood. It's very exciting. She is working on a project to look at styrofoam buoys because buoys are part of ocean acidification. So she's working on lobster buoys that will be compostable after 2 years. And it's very promising. And I said, if you're going to do that, you're not going to grow them in Troy, New York. You're going to grow them in Maine because it's cold, it's dark, and we're full of, so it's really... There's an energy pod in Denmark that's just been commercialized. It's got paddles. And just the kinetic motion of these paddles on the ocean can power 4,000 homes. There are things that are good for the environment, incredible for our job creation, and will bring young people here because they're good, high-technology jobs that we can export to the rest of the country and the rest of the world. We have to come up with innovative, good ideas and start making that what Maine's brand is, not the old state with crank phones and no electricity and no broadband. So that's one of the things I really want to work on.
Yeah, thank you. I think if we want to transform the state of Maine to create more of a culture of innovators, of entrepreneurs, where young people want to be, part of it is addressing student loans. Part of it is having a workforce training plan, because it's harder to find plumber, electricians, carpenters, or mason in this state than it is a lawyer. But part of it's cultural, too. We've got to stop saying we've never done it that way before. We've got to stop saying people are from away. Think of the message that sends. And then we've got to start looking at our environment, because I will have the economic argument. I don't even need to talk climate change. I will have the economic argument with anybody any day of the week. We have an abundance of natural resources. The forest products, right? We used to rely on people reading newspapers. Well, they're not. They're reading on laptops. But the next generation of products, cross-laminated timber, bioplastics, wood-based biofuels, We have craft breweries taking off in New England right now. You talk to the people in that industry, they're getting their hops and their barley from the Midwest or from Europe. Barley is a great rotational crop for potatoes. We ought to be doing that up in northern Maine. We have an abundance of ability in clean energy. And I would encourage you to look at my website. I spent a lot of time on it. We want to change the culture in Maine to be like the Research Triangle down in North Carolina or Austin or Denver, where young people want to be. Let's start making the next generation of products. We have the ability to do that here. That's where they want to be. They want to be in the cutting edge of a cool thing that's happening, that's future-oriented. And that's what we can do, and that's what I've been talking about, and that's what I would do as governor. Thank you.
Next up is Mark Eads.
Microphone. Thank you. I think I'm going to answer Riley's question about gun violence and what we're going to do about it, because this has been one of those moments in our history where the students have just inspired me in a way, and I think this country in a way that hasn't happened in a long time. And I was thrilled and really proud to be asked to talk on the steps of Portland City Hall by a group of teachers and students shortly after Parkland. And they wanted to hear about what were we going to do about it. And the first thing is, and I agree 100% with what Betsy's saying here about the threat of the NRA and the fact that they have driven the agenda aggressively on this issue. Until we stand up to the NRA and say, no, enough, not this time, nothing's going to happen. So I was honored to speak to the students and teachers. Then I wrote an op-ed, and then I got trashed on conservative talk radio for a couple days, which was fun. And Adams talked about Ray Richardson being the Rush Limbaugh of conservative talk show radio here in Maine. He took a particular, pointed target at myself, and I called him up and I said, "Hey, can I come in? Can we talk about this?" And that's what I did a few days later. And I thought it was going to be he and I. It was him and 4 of his buddies, which was fine. We had this conversation. I leaned into it. We had a great conversation about common sense gun reform that we need in this state to keep our students safe. This is our opportunity, our moment to do something. I was proud to receive recognition from the Moms Demand Action around this issue. We need a leader that is going to stand up to the NRA and say enough is enough and get the lobby out of the decision making.
Janet's not here to pick a question to respond to. We sent her one, and it is this. Between 2011 and 2015, the proportion of children in Maine living in deep poverty increased at a rate 8 times the national average and faster than any other state in the nation. How do you intend to reverse this?
Janet writes, usually what you hear is that economic development and education are the silver bullets. It's true that providing a world-class education is critical to giving kids opportunities, and growing the economy long-term is crucial to reduce poverty. But I think we need to acknowledge that the greatest school in the world won't accomplish anything if the students can't concentrate because they're too hungry to think, or they're sick and can't afford to go see a doctor. That's why we need a comprehensive plan to address food insecurity, the opioid crisis that has left thousands of Maine kids to be taken care of by grandparents or foster care, and expand Medicaid, not just grow the economy and hope it all works out. As governor, I'd start by taking advantage of the USDA policy that allows states to apply for broader SNAP aid in places that have experienced high unemployment, especially in western and northern Maine. I'd also support growing the local food economy, small farms, processors, and distributors by supporting programs like Maine Harvest Bucks, which allow SNAP recipients to get double their money's worth of fresh local produce at farmers markets, co-ops, and farm stands. As far as the opioid crisis goes, I'd support a prevention, rehab, and treatment plan, including recovery coaches in emergency rooms and medication-assisted treatment. That's why when Paul LePage vetoed the Narcan bills last year and said Narcan doesn't save lives, it just postpones death, I took money from the pharmaceutical settlements and bought enough Narcan to equip police officers all across the state. Thank you.
Okay, we're at the final stage of the forum, and before we go to the closing question, which each of our candidates will answer, I just want to thank them so much for coming. It must be exhausting. I don't know about you, but I think it's going to be pretty hard to rank them. They're all fantastic. We're going to win whoever. And I will let Janet answer. How many minutes? 2 minutes. I will let Janet answer this question first so you can think about it. She had time to think about it. It's a short question. What do you think is Maine's greatest challenge, and how will you address it?
Janet writes, it's hard to pick just one issue as we face the opioid crisis, a Trump administration seeking to undermine our civil rights and environmental protections, an aging workforce, and many more challenges. So what I choose to address is something that I think is stopping us from making progress on all of those issues. That is the growing polarization and divisiveness that we're seeing in our political process and in our culture. I've always been proud that even when our national politics got nasty, in Maine we kept coming to the table, talking to each other, and working to serve our state as best we could together. These last few years, that hasn't always felt true. I want my kids and grandkids to grow up in a caring, united state, not one divided into endless fighting between the 1st Congressional District and the 2nd, Republicans against Democrats, or Native Mainers against New Mainers. Running for election in the Republican-leaning districts of Farmington and Industry, I learned to find common ground with people across the political spectrum, listening, appealing to our shared values, and working out a path forward. That experience served me well when I sat on the Appropriations Committee during the recession. We got through those tough years by bringing everyone to the table and working together to keep the budget balanced and avoid cuts to critical services like public safety, education, and healthcare. I bring that same ethos of civility, cooperation, and leadership to the Blaine House. And I'll do everything in my power to help lead the state back to a time when disagreement did not mean all-out partisan warfare, where we could compromise to get things done, and where we looked at our state politics as a point of pride and not through our fingers.
Okay, I'm going to just have you go down the row. So if you'd send the mic to Don and Diane, great. And you each get 2 minutes.
I think the biggest challenge is getting people to the table. And I, in January, printed out my papers, and my first word was platform is respect, because I saw where issues weren't being handled. And I've mentioned that before. We argued about personalities, positions, political tags, but not issues. And those are the things that are going to move Maine forward. And we need to pull people to the table. And I saw those successes, and that's why I ran initially just a short period of time, 6 years. But transparency, confidence, people setting the right tone, the direction. You have to have that ability to pull people together and set that goal. And that's the critical thing, is getting people to have confidence in you, confidence in their neighbor, confidence that I'm really going to the table because we really are going to do something for Mainers. And that's all of us, new Mainers, individuals coming in. In doing that, we will be able to fill those positions, and people will have livable wages. We'll keep those kids in Maine. We'll be able to do research and development and be creative, innovative. But we have to work together. We're going to have to find the money to do these things. I'm a money person, always. Everything I'm looking at is, we need to do it, but how do we do it? But that comes with collaborations. It isn't you sit there and I, as one governor, is going to get everything done. I'm going to take, my logo is taking the state of Maine, the ME part, and turning it upside down. And we will be successful if we respect each other and we talk about these issues and we look at food insecurity and we look at positions and we look at training and new workforce development. But we have to do this together, and we have to not be sitting back and saying, okay, I actually walked the walk, truly, for 6 years, getting people to say, I believe her. My background, my support systems, my flag of waving is all the people in that surrounding area in Biddeford who said she really did that. She really stood up. I stand firm, I look at issues, and I say, are you the person that should be at the table? If we're not resolving it, then who should be at that table? And let's move forward. Thank you.
I would say our biggest challenge as Democrats is winning. We haven't received over 50% of the vote in a statewide race since George Mitchell ran for re-election in 1988. And when Betsy was mentioning we spent 3 hours this morning at an event, one of the reasons why there were 4 independents that were there, all former Democrats from what I understand, and all planning to run for governor. We wonder why we're not running races. We not only need to excite and energize the base, folks in this room, we need to appeal to independents. We need to appeal to moderate-leaning Republicans. Then we got to demonstrate we can govern well. Because when you go to diners across this state, there may be frustration at LePage, Trump, whatever it is, the circus this world has turned into. But demonstrating that that Democrats know how to govern well, we haven't done that yet. When I got back from Afghanistan, I had several folks approach me about considering doing this. And they said, you know, you're the last Democrat that we've seen in the last 20 years, 15 years. When you ran for office, Barb mentioned I came in second in a very crowded Democratic primary. Where I won and where I won big were all the rural areas and all the mill towns, all the areas where we're losing now. And they thought that I could be the type of candidate that could do well in the 2nd District, 1st District, unite the party, do all the things we need to do. But one of the challenges when you're coming in and you're running is being able to unite people on a common vision. And I talked to you tonight about a lot of the frustration, a lot of what drives me as a candidate. It's this trend that we're heading into. It scares the hell out of me. I'm raising 5 young kids in this state. My wife and I are so concerned about where we're going. We've got to talk about what unites us. We've got to talk about the fact that people need a place to go on Monday morning. We need to talk in Millinocket and Medway and Jay and all of those areas. I'm working my butt off in this campaign to do that. I would ask you to take a close look at what we're trying to do here. My campaign website is Cody for Maine. I'd be honored to have your support. Either way, I'm supporting whoever wins this nomination because we got to win in November.
Usually I go last because my name is Sweet. And I always say, I'm so glad you got to meet my cabinet first. Because I'm honored to run with these amazing people. I think the biggest challenge we have is healthcare. But more importantly, is electing a leader who can excite and energize the state of Maine. We need to have someone who has a bold vision, but who has practical experience of getting things done, and who is not the same old, same old. Look who we're voting for. Look who Mainers are voting for. People who are ready to stand up for something, whether they agree with it or not, and not do the same thing over and over again. But honestly, I don't know about you, we've become really good resistors. We're really good at saying no. But I think we long to say yes. And I think we are ready to say yes. Yes to health care, yes to jobs that pay, yes to a clean environment, and yes to the foundational issue of it all, which is to get money out of politics. I think we are ready, and this is our moment. We are ready to do something very different, and it's never been easier. We have ranked choice voting. You can say, yes, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to vote for a clean elections candidate and show Maine and the rest of the country that we can do this without big money. And if not enough people do it, she won't win and my vote will go to the next person. But we have to make a statement. We have to say, we can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. This is our moment to do that. Because I have practical experience for 35 years. And as an advocate for low-income people and people with disabilities and the elderly and women, I get hired year by year. I see some people in this audience who hired me. I only get hired again if I get something done. So it's not like we have to have bold vision and the practical thing of getting it done, and someone who's not part of what people see as a very broken system. That's me. I am a sweet spot. I can't help myself. But if you're ready to say yes to something different and meet the biggest challenge that we have, which, as Adam said, is getting someone elected, getting Maine, winning the hearts and minds back of Mainers, I hope you'll say yes to me, and I really hope you'll say yes to giving $5 to clean elections candidates, including me. I have to get 300 more in the next 10 days before I can finish up this campaign, so I would really appreciate that, and most importantly, I hope you'll rank me first on your ballot on June 12th. Thank you so much.
I really wish I had the sweet spot thing. It's beautiful. My name is Mark Eves. I don't know if you can do much with that. But I do agree. I want to go, what I think is the biggest challenge for this state is the fact that we are the oldest state in the nation, that we have a retiring workforce, 50% in 10 years, and we have no strategy to replace those retiring workers. But what I want to really talk about, because I think Adam hit it on the head, we have to win. We have to win this one. We have to nominate a candidate that can win in a statewide election in November. My assessment of what's happened over the last several election cycles is that we have nominated Democrats that are not so much different than independent moderates. I believe we have to give Mainers a choice, and a drastically different choice, and that is why this nominating process is so important. We need a strong progressive that will stand up for single-payer health care, that will fight for paid family leave, that will do the things that distinguish us from those moderate independents. If we don't, we will not win in November. I ask you to consider this campaign, look at my voting record, look at the things that I've stood for. Again, I'll start where I'll end where I began. And that is the profession that I went into to help people, and why I got into this. Visiting homes in rural Maine, sitting in living rooms and around kitchen tables, and listening to the struggles of people living in poverty. We need to listen to people more. There's nobody listening to anybody anymore. We need to make sure that not only we win an election, but that we know how to get things done on the other side of it. For 6 years, I served in the State House with Paula Page. These were not fun, easy times. You guys read the headlines on that one. Not fun at all. But we didn't give up on getting things done. That's why I partnered with unlikely people like David Burns, who is a Republican from Washington County, to pass the Affordable Senior Housing Bond. That's why I partnered with Mike Thibodeau, even though it wasn't fun all the time, to make sure that we didn't shut down state government. You need a leader that can build relationships, know something about getting it done, and focusing on the fact that we need to attract more Mainers, more young people to this state. I want to be the youngest governor and the oldest state in the nation, to tell the story about what it is like to raise a young family, the quality of life, our communities, our public schools. We need a champion for the state. I hope you consider this race. My name is Mark Eves, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Well, if you nominate me by chance, you will not only have the youngest governor in the state, you will also shatter the glass ceiling in this state. This election is about power. Who has it and who doesn't? Let's be very clear. As progressives, we do not talk about power, political power, economic power. And what we saw in 2016 was a struggle of the working class and the middle class against the elite, the establishment, the super rich who have, and the political operatives who have controlled our democracy for too long. It is no coincidence that Donald Trump won in second CD, and yet we won every progressive, almost every progressive ballot box initiative out there. You want to talk about who's winning, I want to talk about imagining greater, but let's talk about who's winning. 2 statewide elections in 2016, this girl. We win on our ideas. We win with our backbone. And for too long, we have run to the center. And that is not where people are. People's hearts are frustrated, and they are stuck in this real issue of wealth inequality. That is what power is about. And we have to take our political power back like we are doing with ranked choice voting, and we have to take our economic power back. It is why it is time for us to rethink our economy and do a new deal here in Maine and lead the way across the country. A new deal includes a right to a good job with good wages, the right to organize at work, the right to single-payer health care, for equal pay for equal work, for freedom from discrimination, for a secure retirement, for safe, affordable home, nutritious food, clean water, quality education, and the right to a public banking system so that our power is out of Wall Street and on Main Street. My name is Diane Russell. I fight like a girl and I can rustle it up. And if you nominate me, I will be the next Ann Richards of this country, and I will lead us and take power back from the elites who have stolen it from us year after year. You gonna rustle it up, Mark? Come on, bring it.
We've been doing a lot of these forums. That's a new tagline. Right? Am I wrong?
I delivered it well. It's not what you need these days. That was good. I got one for you, Mark, though, when you're ready.
You do?
Yeah, people are dying to go for them.
No, I don't do taglines. It's too much of me. Listen, it's difficult being the last person. I happen to agree with most of the points that my colleagues have struck. But I want to pick on Adam for a minute. Oftentimes in forums...
First, yeah.
No, today I agree with you. First we have to win. But Adam and I share a history of serving under arms. He as a soldier, I as a police officer. And what ties us together is the idea that when we were on that team, we were of the same mind. Once we made a decision, we execute. We don't have that as a party. We haven't had that discipline for a long time. In 2016, we had our Civil War. That war isn't over, ladies and gentlemen. All right? We're still not clear what it means to be a Democrat. Democrats do govern well. We do very well in Augusta. To the point, the tagline is this: they're the only adults in the room. Right? I don't feel good about that, because what we see as compromise, the opposition has interpreted to be concession. And they come at us session after session, knowing in the end, we'll live up to that tagline. It's not about choosing just a governor. It's about choosing the direction of this party. That's what I worry about. That is the biggest decision. I went with Senator Sanders because I thought the vision was correct for the America that we live in. And I won't abandon that view. Those are the people that I stand. All right? When Speaker Eves, Representative Russell, myself were on the floors of the House and Senate, we often lost the big ones, that 5%, not because of the Republicans, because the Democrats split. We need a unified party, and we need to understand where we're going. And it's not about programs and all these ideas you heard today. It's about what we value, and it should be each other. And that's how we move forward, and that's how we accomplish what my good friend Adam talks about, and he's correct. We have to win, but we cannot win unless we are of the same mind. Thank you.
I feel very confident that there is a winner somewhere in this. This is one of these people will be your next governor. Now, before you go, I would like to point out local candidates who are here who would love to talk with you. Natasha Irving, who is running for the DA in this district. Holly Stover, who is running in, there she is, the Booth Bay region, Westport. Alan Plummer, who is here from the western part of the county, District 88. Todd Brackett, who's running for sheriff, I know he was here. Laura Portman, who is running for Senate. There's also the